communication and interaction among people, we use platforms, such as WhatsApp, TikTok, YouTube. So it is communication and it's interaction. But there are some platforms that are involved, like those that I've given as examples: YouTube, WhatsApp, TikTok. Those platforms are the social platforms that we use to communicate with.
All right, but what would you say the purpose of social media is then? What are supposed to be? What is it that we're supposed to be using it for, and what is it that we aren't supposed to be using social media for?
Well, really, the purpose in the first place was supposed to be like interaction, but from its inception, I don't know if was it really meant to remove the human aspect of interaction. But the biggest purpose of social media was that we meet people, we interact with people, we communicate with them, we get intimate with them. So it was just for that purpose of communication and interaction.
But what would you say have changed? Is it because since the advent of this technology or the advent of all the social media platforms, we didn't understand the use? That's why we find ourselves in the situation that we are in right now?
I think what has happened now is people have deprived themselves of human interaction, human intimacy. And we have tried to replace it with our social media interaction. And unfortunately, research has shown that people who use social media more and more are likely to get more anxious and get depressed, as opposed to, you can have so many friends and family in real life, and you interact with them. You have a good exposure to love, to support, to hope. But on the other side of the coin, when we find people with so many followers and interaction on social media, research is showing that increasingly more and more of them get depressed and anxious as they interact with people on social media. So definitely there's more rewards in interacting physically as opposed to actually interacting on social media platforms.
All right, as you are saying, anxiousness and depression also comes due to the use of social media. What are some of the things that you can say have changed since the presence of social media?
It's the way we perceive ourselves. Since social media is all about how many people are going to like our post, how many people are going to comment, and even the dynamics of how the comments will come. Some comments can come friendly, some comments can come nasty. So these depressions and anxiety are going to be coming through because of triggers on social media. Maybe there's a way you perceive yourself in real life. People on social media, they don't really know you. They know you according to what you can post or what you can share. So sometimes you don't get enough likes. Sometimes somebody comments in a very negative way. Somebody can bash a human figure. Let's say they are bashing or they are criticizing people who are skinny, and you are skinny, and it feels like they're attacking you personally. So they are triggering you in an area where already you are experiencing a low self-confidence, you're experiencing esteem issues, and when they bash, even not directly you and the next person, it causes you to overthink, to criticize yourself. You become anxious, you worry, to say, oh my God, if they perceive this human being this way, what about me? So you see where the anxiety comes from. It's because of a false image that we put out and false statements that we put out, and the reaction can be quite damaging sometimes. And it has been reported in certain areas of the world that some celebrities have actually committed suicide after a nasty comment was made on their social media platform or on their post. 5 hours, 2 hours later, a person decides to take their life. It's a serious matter.
All right, as you've already mentioned, that social media is not a reflection of reality. Now, let's look at the mental health. How can excessive use of social media affect our mental health?
Excessive use of social media, it makes us, like I said, it deprives us of the real human connection. So it denies us of real love. There's a difference between you posting a positive comment on a post, as opposed to maybe you give me that positive comment in person and you give me a hug in person. The reinforcement is more when it is given in person. So you can see the huge difference between actually engaging on social media and engaging in person. You must understand that in real life, we have our own fears. We have our own areas where we feel hopeless. But one of the things that we have identified so far with social media is most of the time we try to put out our best image so everybody thinks we are okay. But in real life, we have an opportunity to communicate our real anxieties, our real fears, areas where we are hopeless, and we are able to get a real connection with a real human being who really cares, and they can go an extra mile to encouraging you, to giving you advice, to using their own experience to really speak into your life. So I'm trying to say, when you're on social media, because of the image, the false, sugar-coated lifestyle that we put out there, people assume we are okay. So people don't they don't support us the way they would have if they were to know in real life that we are not okay. So we've got anxieties and fears that we cannot necessarily fully put out on social media. But in real life, we can actually sit down with a human being and speak it out and get the necessary support.
All right, Mr. Kebaitse, as you already mentioned, that is not really the reflection of reality. What kind of society the unsafe use or the excessive use, rather, of social media creates? The society that we are going to be seeing is if we get to indulge much into social media and it affects our mental health.
Yes. You see, like I said earlier on, we are building a society where everything is sugar-coated. There's a false image that is coming out. There's false prosperity, false peace, false joy. And as a result, we have people who spend, people spend so much time multitasking on social media. They deny themselves time to themselves. They're so concerned about what is happening in the lives of others. So they spend so much time. We spend so much time multitasking on different social media platforms to find out and keep up with what is happening in other people's lives. So what has happened is we deny ourselves. We find that we deprive ourselves of enough sleep. We find ourselves that our minds are getting fed so much junk that we think so much negative thoughts, because some of the posts are negative. Some of the posts is pornographic images. Some of the posts is actually cyberbullying. We are observing how much people are bullying others, and sometimes even in the name of jokes. There are jokes that are made on social media that we entertain that are meant to bash others. So in our mind, we are actually consuming so much of this junk, and it controls our reaction. It controls our thought patterns. What are we meditating on? We are meditating on statements, images, pictures, videos that can look down or diminish other people. What does that do to us? What about areas where we are diminished or we have been bruised ourselves? So this is where the depression comes from. This is where the hopelessness comes from, because sometimes they're bashing an image or somebody who identifies with you. They don't know that in the audience there's somebody who's sitting down and not being bashed, but they identify directly with whoever is being bashed in that moment. So sleep deprivation, we can't control, we can't have a steady flow of positive thoughts because we are consuming so much negative on a daily from different platforms, and we are multitasking in this. So what is happening also is that we don't have an independent mind. we are always feeding our mind with images, videos, news from these different platforms. Think about it. When do you have time to make independent thoughts and just declutter your mind outside of always feeding your mind with the social? So definitely, it controls your world view. It's like your world is seen through a lens of social media, and there's a disaster in that. Sometimes you're going to see it through the hopelessness of social media, the helplessness of social media, and all the atrocities that we see on social media. Unfortunately, such is the case. So we see the world through a lens of social media platforms. We don't necessarily see the world through a clean and clear perspective of our own mind. Are you following me so far?
Most definitely. All right.
Yes, sir.
Now, you mentioned the power that the social media has, especially on those who indulge it for most of their time, and that it develops this person who is not an independent thinker, who are mostly affected by this. And why is that the case? And what can parents, if at all its children, can do, and other stakeholders to curb this? What is it that ought to be done?
I think we need to do teachings where we try to show people that they don't have a proper self-identity. I've just made a statement. We're seeing the world through the lens of a social media. So if possible, we need to organize boot camps where we can switch off. I've seen boot camps where they put off drug addicts for a couple of 3 to 6 months to keep them away from the drugs, to rehabilitate them. We need those kind of boot camps to switch off from our devices, because it's causing anxiety, it's causing depression, it's causing certain cases of suicide. So we need to be able to come to a place to say, guys, can we switch off and reflect and really think about who we are without social media, in the absence of these platforms? Who are we?
But who are mostly affected? Is it children, or even parents are suffering from the same fate?
Unfortunately, it's all of us.
All right.
To be honest, these devices, it's all of us. What is said about, it's important that you ask about children, because with children, think about this. Smartphones are more exciting than books. If a child spends enough time on smartphones and watching videos and commenting on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, you name it, how much interest are they going to have on books? This is the reality that educators are facing, to say more and more young people and children are showing interest in smartphones. How much interest can you have on a real book after looking at something as exciting and as entertaining as a smartphone? So if we have ever wondered why some of our students, they have a short attention span, they're struggling to pass at school, is because they have deprived themselves time with books, and they have invested their time in social media platforms. And it's a real issue, it's a real concern.
Most definitely. Now, social media is not only bad all the time. Let's talk about the positive aspect of social media on our mental health.
Well, definitely the positive aspect is that while social media has made the world to be sort of like a global village, to say we can visit other parts of the world through social media. And certainly it has made certain discussions for business people. Certain businesses are thriving now because sometimes they were started on social media platforms and they went to higher high, you know. So it is a very huge communication tool on the positive side, and it's big for businesses, and it helps us to experience the world just in a space of a short time. Through social media, you would have rounded up what is happening all over the world. So that is the positive side.
All right. Now, where do we draw the line between normal and excessive use of social media? How can we bring the balance? I mean, we just realized that it's not all bad. The good things that comes also with the indulgence of social media. Where do we draw the line? I mean, there are those who might even feel guilty that they're on social media, but we have seen the positive side of it. Where do we get to draw the line to say this is the positive way? And if there are tips you can share with us, what is it that we ought to be doing if you see that you now becoming addictive of much indulgence on social media?
It has been estimated that on average we spend probably at least 2 hours on social media. But I think in Botswana, because we are here, we see what's happening on the ground. Probably it's not 2 hours; it's much more than that. You know, so if you see it becoming an addictive habit, it means it has managed to get to your subconscious. If you see yourself use social media so much that even when you go to the bathroom, you want to go with your phone. Every 5 minutes where you are free, you pick up your phone. We need to detox. Like I said earlier on, detoxing means switching off our devices and connecting with real people. We need to cultivate a culture of how can we interact with real people. You see, other generations in the past, because there wasn't all of this, they had more human interaction. So we need to figure out strategies of how can we interact more as human beings in real life. How can we connect more to our children, more to our spouses, more to our neighbors, more to other people in the community outside of social media? We need to be very deliberate about that. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in a place where more and more people are getting into depression, into anxiety because of lack of that human connection. So when you see yourself exceeding at least 2 hours, even 2 hours is a lot on social media daily. Let's figure out strategies of how we can cut down, because everything is suffering. How we deliver at work can suffer because of social media. How students perform at school can suffer because of social media. So let's switch off. Can you reasonably challenge yourself to go 2-3 days not being on social media platforms just to detox the mind? We need to come to a place where we can make those robust decisions and follow up on that.
All right, I believe that could be some of the tough, ways one could even want to take as we are seeing the impact that the social media has, especially on the young generation. What are some of the ways in which social media can affect our day-to-day lives? I mean, on a daily basis, you know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. If I'm working, I wake up at this time. This is when I prepare breakfast and go to work. And when I'm a student, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. What are some of the ways in which social media can affect our day-to-day lives?
Well, with our day-to-day life, like I say, sometimes if we don't control social media, we lose control of time. We lose control. And when we lose control of time, it means we don't even give ourselves enough time to start and complete tasks. We cannot measure performance properly because some of the time is allocated to social media. I mentioned earlier on to say there's chronic sleep deprivation. Some people, the reason why they have difficulty sleeping is because their mind is cluttered with so much pictures and images from social media. We are regurgitating so much information. We are playing it out. We are meditating on what we have consumed. So we lose control of time. We don't get enough sleep, and guess what? We worry too much. We worry too much. We have levels of depression that are escalating because of how we can get attacked online. You know, a couple of months I had a communication with a young girl who got attacked on social media. She shared some WhatsApp messages privately with her friend, and she said some really deep, intimate things with her. And the friend, when they had the fight, the friend decided to throw it on Facebook for the whole world to see. So she was shamed. So she was now depressed. She couldn't go to school, couldn't cope, and she felt suicidal. And these are the kind of issues that will come to us as trauma counselors because of social media. Recently, young people fight over a phone. There are messages that have been going back and forth through social media, WhatsApp, Facebook. A partner to a young man doesn't want them to see this. They throw the phone out of the window. This young man is suicidal. He drinks some pills and some chemicals. He wants to kill himself. So the reality is people were sitting on a lounge watching TV. Social media comes in, messages via Facebook inbox, WhatsApp, a fight erupts. So peace is disturbed because of some of these social media platforms. So it's not a simple matter. Earlier on, I mentioned that because of a nasty comment and attack on certain personalities, even celebrities, people end up wanting to take their lives. So social media can even affect our whole perception of who we are. We tend to identify with the attacks that come from other people because they made a judgment and concluded it on a social platform. They've never met us in person. But when they had the opportunity, they attacked us based on what we posted, how we commented, and we believed them. So we need to cut down so that we can have a sense of identity.
Right.
We can be able to control our time. We can be able to control our worldview.
All right. But in the same breath, why is that social media can have so much power over people? Is it a psychological thing, as we are seeing the power that the social media possesses right now with the change that it can do in one's life? What is it that it has? Is it a psychological thing?
It is a psychological thing because, remember, on the inside of us, in our emotions and our thoughts, there's already some positives that are happening, but there's also some negatives that are happening. So if I have some hopelessness inside of me and I have some helplessness, I have suicidal thoughts, I have bitterness, and I start to confront or I indulge myself with images of helplessness, hopelessness, videos that promote violence, some cyberbullying, what does that do to me when I'm already traumatized and I interact with something that accelerates that feeling, that brings it heightens it? You understand? So it was already in me, but when I connected with it on social media, it just heightened the feeling that I have, that I'm hopeless, I'm useless, I can't be loved, I'm not good enough. Because what happens also is that we see people posting themselves like they're doing so well, they look so happy, everything seems to be going for them. So what we do, we compare ourselves to them, and we start to degrade ourselves, we start to look down on ourselves, we judge ourselves wrongly, and we make the wrong decisions. But in the end, still, already there was that negative emotion inside. It was just heightened by interacting with the wrong content on social media.
All right, now we are wrapping up our conversation. What damage can social media have in the society? I mean, we're talking about relationships, we're talking about self-esteem. We talked about the time that we spend on the socials. How is it affecting the relationships that we do have, either the romantic relationships or the family relationships that we do have? And by just consuming all these and experiences of other people, as you have saying, you can see that things are happening on the social media, and we have got this low self-esteem because we think this is the template of how life it should be.
Yes, to the issue of human interaction, we are failing to be present because even when we're sitting in the living room with our spouses, with our children, sometimes everybody is on their device. So we are failing to be present. We are failing to offer ourselves selflessly to our children and to have a decent conversation with them, to hear them out, hear their fears, hear their anxiety, hear their hopes, their wins, their losses. We are failing to be present. So we need to be careful that social media, it doesn't steal peace from our homes. It doesn't steal interaction from our homes. It doesn't steal that intimacy that is so necessary for a family to move forward. It doesn't steal that support that we need to give children. Sit down with them, follow up on their schoolwork, see if they're doing well, see if they're paying attention to their books. So social media, it is depriving us of being present, and that presence means human interaction. So that is how it's killing us. We are not present. We are so engulfed or involved in a bubble of a social interaction on social platforms, whereas human interaction is now going down increasingly, even now in our homes.
All right, trauma counselor, Mr. Kebaitse, thank you so much for your time. Such an insightful conversation that we have just had, and I believe we have taken a lot from this as the generation that really indulge much on social media. Thank you so much for your time.
For having me, sir.
I had on the line with me Mr. Kebaitse, trauma counselor. We're talking about we're discussing about the impact of social media and how it affects our relationship and moving forward. Don't move. I'm coming back with still to come.
ka rona ya te khale mme gompieno se re se itemogela madi ba rona a khadile ka ketare ka lebelo le le go godimo ka lebaka la gore tiriso ya no ya gola.